many people, winter isn't an enjoyable time of year. It's cold and wet and makes traveling difficult. Even I have a love-hate relationship with the season. But when the snow is falling and everything is quiet, it slows the world down to my preferred state. That's what I've been trying to capture in the music over all these years. I've explored other aspects of winter, such as in the somber black trees among amber skies in 2010, as well as recapturing the magic of the original Winter Embrace in the Sidereal Cycle 3 from 2012. But for many longtime listeners, the original still holds up after all these years. So, how did it all begin? The original version of Winter Embrace was a shorter 25-minute piece, written in early 2002. Later that year, I expanded upon it to produce my first long-play album, which was my ultimate goal. I was fascinated by long single tracks, or albums with multiple tracks melded into one cohesive whole. Pete Namlook's 4-part series, titled Season's Greetings, played a big inspirational role in the creation of Winter Embrace. If you listen to his take on winter, you'll hear some minor similarities between that and my own work. The version of Winter Embrace from 2002 has, in fact, only been heard by a few people. The version you know was completed and released in 2005, and the reason for this was due to the software used to create the music. It wasn't written in a DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation, but instead used a program called a music tracker. The roots for music trackers date back to the late 80s on the Amiga computer, and later on PC, where I discovered it in the early 90s. It has some functions of a DAW, but is pretty much limited in any other way. A big part of that limitation was my lack of decent sample sets. Here's an example of what the original version of Winter Embrace sounds like in the program I used called Mad Tracker. As you can see, the music is written in a spreadsheet-style form, and this is how I created music between 1993 to mid-2002 before moving to FL Studio, which is what I still use today in 2017. You might also notice that the sample list at the top mentions Alien 3. As I said, my sample pool was extremely limited, and I had created a few using the Alien 3 soundtrack. There's a few moments where a single instrument plays one sustained note, so I was able to grab that and make my own music with it. In 2005, the last update to Mad Tracker provided support for VST plugin technology. Simply put, VSTs are universal programs that can be loaded into nearly any modern DAW, providing high-quality synths, samplers, and effects. With this update, I was able to use my orchestral plugins, allowing me to release the version of Winter Embrace you've known for all these years. As an aside, you might be interested to know that some tracks for the Elements Fire were also written in this software, specifically White Light and the opening and closing tracks. Now, it's 2017, 15 years later. Any artist can tell you that we're always learning something new. I've learned so much about sound design between then and now, and my current toolset offers me so many more options than what I had then. So I went back to the 2005 project file and exported the MIDI data, which allowed me to import into FL Studio, and this is what I got. I have to say, I was actually surprised by the complexity of the composition. There was a lot more going on there than I remembered. It also imported as a giant mess and took a fairly long time to get in working order. But once it was done, this is what it looked like. The next step was to match the old samples in the original to something new yet familiar. The violins and cello were an easy start. However, to give life to the performance required a lot of fine-tuning. You can see all those thin envelopes behind the notes. Those control the strength and vibrato of the note being played. These were drawn by hand and no copying pasting happening here. I wanted it to sound as natural as possible. It took time, but I think it was worth it. Following that are the more drony elements, which consist of 2 instruments playing in lower and upper octaves. Sometimes they play in unison, but more often they play off each other. My search for a similar sound ended up with a mix between steel lap guitar and the mellotron flute. I knew the replacements wouldn't be 100% the same, but what had been the point otherwise? I was looking for replacements that sounded better, yet kept the feeling of the original. And if you were wondering why I didn't just touch up the originals, believe me when I say they were a lost cause. For the upper octave, I removed the mellotron and added a second guitar, removing the attack from the picking to give it a smooth sound. Lastly, for this instrument that plays closer to the end, a more drastic adjustment was needed. The original was just too loud and piercing, so I used a much more subtle sound. Instead of popping out and saying, "Hey, I'm here," now it just joins the drift without causing a distraction. With everything complete in FL Studio, I export the audio stems and do my final mix and master in Studio One. Here you can see the wind sounds, 3 of them mixed together, with volume envelopes to give some extra variation. The xylophone from the original was used here, consisting of 4 tracks mixed together, along with 2 others for the reversed version that starts playing around halfway through the piece. I experimented with other instruments to replace the xylophone, but it just changed the sound too much, and I lost what made the original sound like it did. So, in a way, the xylophone almost acts as an anchor between the old and new version. You'll note there's breaks through the waveforms, and the reason for this was due that the tempo within Mad Tracker is complete garbage. So had I not done this, they would have slowly gone out of sync with everything else I did in FL Studio. You can see small crossfades at every cut, and it's so minor you can't hear it. So yeah, aside from volume adjustments throughout each track and some EQing, it was finally finished. I hope you found this interesting. I realize I glossed over some aspects, but I didn't see a point in tearing down my process to such a granular level. Ultimately, I hope you enjoy what I'm calling the definitive version of Winter Embrace. I took a chance and made it available to purchase on Factory Press CD, so if you enjoy your music on a physical medium as opposed to downloads and streaming, I hope you add this to your collection. You'll find links below in the description where you can purchase the CD or download. And if it's December 21st or later, you'll find a link to download the MP3 version for free on my site. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for your time.